to the Swimmer Joe Show.
Sid, you didn't know that we had bare naked ladies on doing a front end for us, did you?
You know what, Joe? I love that intro. I remember it from years past. The Swimmer Joe Show. I'm proud to be with you, brother. Here another week. Let's bring some joy into the world.
Well, you know, it's another week, and we really we've talked about so many things on our show, and super pumped about all of them. But you know what? We do want to talk about the little guys, and I say little guys. The age group is, for me, is pretty much the whole program. So there is some seniors in there, but age group is where it's at. And we've got some awesome age group guys with us tonight. And we've got Mark. What's that?
I want to say one thing about age group coaches, Joe, because you hail from Orlando, where one of the greatest, if not the number one greatest age group coach of all time, Harry Mizell, hails.
Wow. Yes.
Now, he owned his team, and he chose to coach the youth of America, Orlando, and there in the Disney belt. Tell us about Harry when you were growing up.
So Harry Mizell, I found out early on that he was in the Battle of the Bulge. Yep, the Battle of the Bulge, fighting hard. He was the disciplinarian that, you know, we can't do it today, but he used to hit us over the head if we took our breath out of the wall. If we did anything wrong, we would have a knot on our head for 2 days. And you know what? You could remember the knot. And so you would do it right. So anyway, he was a basics. He was just a bread and butter type of guy and did everything, you know, just let's get to the basics. And it made everybody really, really fast because they could, you know, they had perfect strokes. Everybody had perfect strokes. And he is just such an awesome guy. And then his son, Kevin. Did the same thing. Another great coach. So anyway,
Mizell legacy. Well, here's where I wanted to go with that is that as we remember what it takes, and my take on Harry, and you guys are always doing it that right way. We got a couple of guys that do things the right way. So, Joe, I'll let you introduce your guests here.
So, of course, Bryan Welter. You can go ahead and bring Bryan Welter, and I've known him for a long time. He's over there in Texas with Lakeside, and they've done a great job there. You guys won tags this time, right, Bryan? Yeah. So, look at this guy. He wins tags. He's a bad to the bone coach, and love him a ton. I see him on all the meets. We've also got Mark Taliaferro from Santa Clara Swim Club. And, you know, he's produced many top 16s over his long life. And look how young he looks. And he's been doing it since 95, producing these swimmers. I mean, he looks like he's 28. So I don't know if he started when he was 10 or whatever. But welcome, guys. You guys are awesome. And let's talk a little age group swimming, shall we?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from both these guys. I know we were getting a little bit in the pre-show where we talked some. But, you know, I know as I understand it so far, Bryan, your teams are in there in Lakeside, Texas. And tell us a little bit about how you're working it out. You got a huge team. How many kids are on the team at peak? How many are now? How many coaches? How many? You know, give us a rundown as you're coming back in the great state of Texas, what they're letting you do and what your team's doing there.
So we've got a kind of an interesting situation because we swim at independent school district pools, and Texas somehow made the decision not to allow outside runners into those pools. Those are our three major facilities. We have about 900 kids on our team, and we have access right now to a 6-lane, 25-yard pool, 45 minutes from me, about 20 minutes from the other site, and about 15 minutes from the other site, and that's it. And we are running about 500 to 600 of those kids through that 6-lane, 25-yard pool, 12 kids at a time, 2 per lane. It's interesting. Get to do the same workout 6 times in a row. It's quite a different type of coaching. And that's kind of our situation. We really don't have a timeline on when they're going to open the ISD pools back up, which are our ISD pools are 3 indoor 50-meter pools. One of them has another 6-lane 25-yard pool attached to it. That's the one in Louisville where they ran the ISL meet. So we haven't gotten any of those back. So until we get those back, we're just making do right now. We have one other 8-lane 50-meter pool that our national group's swimming out of. We have 3 national groups, obviously, because we have 3 sites. So they each get 2 days, basically. And that's kind of how it's breaking out. You know?
So Mark, what the heck are you doing? And I will tell you before you let us in on this, Mark, is how in the world, if you're running 6 practices in a row, I can tell you, I run 3 in a row. I run 3 in a row, and it's a little crazy. But how do you keep the energy up for the age groupers? Because they rely on your energy. So how do you guys do that?
For my guys right now, we're so into the safety protocols and a lot of the stuff that we're doing that we're having to keep a lot of distance. And the other part of it is we set up our program at each site the same. Normally we do things by site, but in this particular situation, we're doing it by group. So like the weird part about having 6 practices in a row that are the same is I'll only have 3 kids in the first workout. I might not have anybody in the second workout. I might have 2 kids in the third workout. I might have 4 kids in the last workout. It's all over the place. So it's incredibly difficult to, to keep the energy up. I mean, you don't know what you got next. You don't know who's coming in when. You don't know. And depending on, they already do lane assignments ahead of time just for organizational stake and for tracking. So you don't know. I mean, it's tough. I wouldn't say that is definitely, I'd say the organizational side of it, we've done a much better job of. The on deck side of it, we're still working on. We've only been back in the water for a week and a half. So
Mark, tell us what's going on at Santa Clara Swim Club. Can you hear us now and come in and give us the lowdown of where you're at?
I've been able to hear Sid and Bryan. I just haven't been able to hear Joe. So thanks for having me on. We're relatively excited. We got to get back in the water on Monday, and we still aren't back at our main pool, which most people know is the International Swim Center, the George Haynes International Swim Center. We're still not back in that pool. We're hopeful that in the next couple of weeks that'll come online and that'll open things up. We do have a 14-lane facility in Milpitas, which is a little farther north, maybe 15 miles north. And we've got a pool down in the south where we rent 8 lanes, and we got 3 hours there, and we're running about 35, 40 kids there. So this week we're going to get back a little bit over 300 of our, 700-800 members. We basically started from the top down. So the senior groups, the way that we have it in our county is 1 per lane plus those people in your household. So we've got siblings. We're basically running 14, 15 groups during the week at the Milpitas site and 3 groups at the Morgan Hill site. And it's better than not swimming, I have to admit. But I'm ready to get back to the ISC so we can get the majority of our membership, if not all of the membership, in the pool.
So Mark, that eagerness is about where we are. Joe and Bryan have gotten into their pools. We're not into our pool. We've been using a little less in pool, 15 yards that we own, and it's been great for individual and for little kids and doing bungees. But after 3 months, you're getting kind of. So we've augmented. We were going 3 days a week to the beach. We upped it to 5 this week, and we only did 1 day at the 15-yard pool, and the kids are loving it. But at the beach, it's different every day. So we're blessed, and I know that, and I'm very thankful. But what I wanted to ask you, in addition to that, Mark, when you come back, what's your plan in terms of, bringing them along? Like you'll probably get, like us, 30% the first week or two, then 50%, and then hope. But when you're bringing them along, the philosophy, because, we know you as one of the greatest age group coaches in the nation, quite possibly to be named the #1 guy, according to your buddy there, Bryan, told us before the show. But regardless, everyone respects how you get the job done. So what's your plan when you come back?
So, like I said, we came back Monday. It's 3 days a week for, like I said, it's essentially our pre-senior groups and up. Our top 11 and 12s are in. Nobody's swimming. We have 1 group, the highest level, the junior national group, is basically swimming an hour and 15 minutes 3 times a week. Other than that, most groups are an hour or 45 minutes. When we get back to ISC, we're going to start adding the age groups in. The idea is that, we didn't want the bulk of our membership of parents having to drive 15, 20 miles if we can, get them into ISC in the next couple of weeks. Now, if that doesn't work, then we may have to change our plans. It's everything's so fluid, it's hour to hour, day to day, facility to facility. It's just one of those things. It's keeping me up at night, trying to make all the plans for it and get all the staffing done.
So if you guys are just joining us, we have a lot of coaches that have joined. If you've just joined us, we do have Mark Taliaferro from Santa Clara and Bryan from Lakeside. Come on and ask us questions. If you have anything, let us know, and we will get it up and talk to him about it.
Okay, well, I know Mark's having a little trouble hearing you, Joe, but he can hear me and he can hear Bryan. And what I thought next was, when you look at these youngsters and emotionally, let's talk about what it does for them. The kids that are in certain age groups, like let's say the 8 and unders, it really, their life is not going to be majorly impacted in swimming. Then you got your 9 to 10, 11-year-old. Then you got those kids that are 12 to 14 that are like, they were right on the verge of maybe getting a junior national cut. So I think everybody's affected differently emotionally. And how do you go about? What types of things have you done or do you expect you will do leading in towards the competition phase, which we all hope is coming by August or sooner, or maybe. Let's go ahead, Bryan. You tell us first.
We've done one thing I will say is we haven't lost many kids. I didn't mention that last time, but we've done an amazing job as a coaching staff of doing Zoom meetings, doing dryland workouts. On mine, I play music and sing along to it on the Zoom meeting, and the kids all think it's hilarious because I'm a terrible, terrible singer. And that's pretty much how we've stayed engaged. I'm hoping that we can just get back in the water and get going again. I mean, seeing them once or twice a week is great, but it gets pretty old after 2 or 3 weeks when you're just swimming to swim and you don't really feel like you're being able to make a lot of progress. So that's kind of been the challenge right now. But that's that's the biggest thing. I've just tried to keep an eye on them in the Zoom meeting and look for changes in personality, and then kind of try to bring those kids back into the groove as we're doing our dryland stuff. Because we have seen, I've seen some kids that are struggling with us right now.
Well, Joe, you know what I'm going to say, Bryan. Come on. I've seen you do karaoke. You're going to drive kids off your team, Coach. Please do not sing to those kids. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
They think it's hilarious, actually.
He you know what? If you get really good, and Jimmy Parmenter mentioned it, and I think a couple others about ZZ Top. So you should be doing all the ZZ Top songs out there. And I don't know, Mark, if you can hear me.
Do a lot of ZZ Top. I need to put that on the playlist.
Yes. And by the way, Mark, when you were gone, when you were checking back in, he did sing for us. So you missed out. All right. So listen,
Mark,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Are you, Mark, are you signed in and back out? We're going to go with you next. You can hear me still, right? Did you hear Joe? Or you got your mic going? There you go. Go ahead, Mark. You don't know the question? You can talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
Now I can't hear you, but anyway, he said, Mark, can you hear me? He said, we just want to hear from you. That's all. Yeah. I don't know who you can hear from. Any of us. Nope.
I can hear you, Joe. I can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. So Mark, let's go and talk about some of the things that you have. Tell me about what your kids are doing as far as did you lose any? Bryan said he didn't lose any. What are the parents thinking about all this COVID mess? What, how are they coping with this?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, it's funny because Bryan and I were talking last week about some of the difference between what happened in his program and what happened in our program where, in Texas, they got to finish their season. They got to have championship meets. We literally were 3 days from a championship meet when things shut down. So I think there was a lot of letdown initially. Obviously there's fears and all that kind of stuff, but in terms of the competitive side of it, there was an extraordinary amount of letdown from, missing a JO meet, missing a Far Western meet, missing a high school championship meet, because that's what we were gearing all those kids up for. So I think the attitude has been fairly positive and supportive. We immediately turned around and said, hey, we're going to do Zoom classes. We wanted to offer them the same number of days a week that they were swimming so that we could kind of give some value and keep some connection to the kids, and they could keep connected to each other. The longer this goes, I mean, the harder it is for everybody. I got to admit, I'm tired of Zoom. I want to be on a pool deck, interacting with kids, interacting with coaches, interacting with parents, and doing what I signed up to do. That being said, again, we're trying to bring it back piece by piece, and hopefully it's closer to in the water than not.
Yeah, it's tough. Sid, it's tough, and our governor. But see, our governor here is. It seems like he's like, you know what? We're just doing it. We're just going to open up, and we're going to do everything we can. Now the schools, on the other hand, are their own little separate beast, right? Like St. Andrews and our public schools here in Orange County, it's a mess. They don't want to open up at all, and so yeah, I could totally understand what Mark is saying, and it's just rough. I mean, some things are open and some things are not, and it's just really rough on them. But they just need to open, and we just need to use our regulations and requirements, or COVID requirements, and just do it.
I attribute it very much like dealing with grief, and we're all dealing with grief, right? So we've all lost something. We lost the Junior Olympics, like Joe said, in Florida. We had our tent set up. We were 12 hours from start when we got the email from Florida Gold Coast. So then we lost the NCAA tournament. I mean, we lost the baseball. We lost this. Everybody's lost so much, the 2020 graduates. So we're in different phases of grief, and how we deal with it is important. But one thing, and Elizabeth Beisel said this, a Silver Lining Girl with a beautiful book, and the idea, we don't know if it's going to be another week, another month, another year. Who knows? But we're going through this thing, and getting the kids to come out better, getting them in and come so they can all learn. We can all learn from this thing. We can all make something special out of it. It's going to be a remarkable time in history, no matter what. If I come out a better man 2 years from now because I did X, Y, Z, so be it. And the same for the kids. And that's what our job is as coaches. So you two coaches, what are you doing to inspire your kids? Besides the Zoom meetings and things, are there any things like with those individual lessons, or is there anything special? Are you connecting in a different way? Have you learned something that you can share with some of these guys?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. We've done Saxon Simpson and Jason, our head coach, and Saxon's one of our full-time staff, have done a really good job with social media, doing social media challenges. So we had a sidewalk chalk. We had take a picture of your pet. We had, I don't even know. We've done a different one every week. And what we've done is we're an arena team. So we give a pair of goggles or a cap or something to the top 3 or 4 social media folks. And I think that's been fun. It's given the kids something to do besides swimming. It's given them a chance to see each other on Facebook and Instagram. We always do like a hashtag sidewalk chalk LAC or something so they can search for it real quick. That's kind of been the only thing beside the Zoom meeting drylands that we've really done. But
all right, so listen, Bryan, you and I talked a week ago about some of the awesome things that we want to talk about on the show, and age group development, building a base. Let's talk about building a base with your program. A lot of coaches that are on, or team owners, they want to build the base. And then the success throughout. How do we build a base? Our junior program on our side is kind of small. I mean, we have a lot of teams around us, but how do you build a base there at Lakeside? When you walked on the deck, was it already big? Do we go, okay, we need to gain another 20, 50 kids, whatever? How do we do that?
I was really fortunate, to make the decision to leave Clearwater and working with Randy to come up here was not an easy one, but this was just too good of a situation. I walked into a site that had a 100-person waiting list. We had 440 kids in the water. We had 3 full-time coaches and about 10 part-time coaches. Jason is also the national coach at my site. Does a great job. So I got first world problems here at Lakeside. I can't complain. I mean, our situation's pretty unique. The biggest thing that I try to do, and I heard Sid bring it up a minute ago. There was a movie in 2004, Air Force One, I think, with Harrison Ford. It was one of those Clancy movies, and they asked the president had been kidnapped, and they asked his daughter what the best thing about her dad was. And this is always, I remember this. I remember the date. I remember when I saw the movie because it was that big of an impact on my career. And she said, the one thing about my dad that amazes me is that he inspires confidence in everyone around him. And that hit me hard. I was like, wow, that is my job. That is my assistant coach's job. I went in, I was working with Adam Schmidt at the time at LSU, and I went in and told Adam, and like Adam pulled his kids out and had a meeting with him about it. So it really stuck in with me. So that's the biggest thing that I preach with our coaching staff is you got to get these kids to believe in themselves and believe in what they're doing. And if you do that, they'll believe in you. And that's pretty much where we go with it. My biggest thing is control what you can control. You can't worry about all these other things. And Mark's right. We were lucky. We finished tags. Literally, we were on our week off when Wednesday COVID stuff hit. Like we were.
It's funny for us. Our kids were literally driving to finals on Thursday night of senior champs. So I mean, they were like in their car, right? And Florida Swimming said it's canceled. Everybody's like, Joe, what's going on? I mean, they're all shaved. They're going to swim to like what was the first night? 800. They're going to swim. They're like ready to go.
They'd already checked into their hotel.
Oh yeah, they're ready to go, man. And wow, what a killer that is. That's so close. All right, you also talked about swimming IQ. What the heck are you talking about when you talk about swimming IQ for 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds?
It kind of goes back to the control what you can control. One of the things that I try to do, and I'm actually coaching 10 to 14-year-olds now. I've generally been a 12 to 14 guy, but I've actually got the group below that now as well. And one of the things that I spend a lot of time on is number one, I try not to create adversarial relationships or have it be in charge. Okay, so the second part of that is I try to make it real clear that this is me and you working together to help you achieve your goals. And first thing we need to do is figure out what those are, and then we need to figure out what we need to do, and then I'll help you with how you do that. And I talk to my 10-year-olds like that. And a lot of them don't get it. But if you keep talking to them like they're adults and you treat them like an equal until you have to treat them like a kid when they do something stupid, it really helps them. It really helps them figure it out on their own. You know, they know the path that they need to go down to get to where they're going. And one of the jokes in our program, and me and Mark and you, Joe, talked about this, is in my site, my kids all laugh whenever I say something about how this is a teaching moment, because that means I haven't done what I'm supposed to and I just screwed up, and now Brian's going to tell me about it. So as soon as I go, okay, this is our teaching moment, the kid goes, And so that's kind of and we talk about it from the beginning of the season. I'm like, guys, if you're not doing what you're supposed to the way you're supposed to, you don't expect me to fix it at the end, or don't expect me to boo-hoo with you at the end when it doesn't work. I'm just not going to do it. And I think Mark's very similar in that. I mean, can you hear us, Mark?
Mark, you're on?
I had to change rooms, but I'm here.
Hey, Mark, I think you need to tell your wife to shut it down for the day and tell her to just clock out of work. Dude, we're good then. We've got her off.
Take a break. But I'll tell you what, whether your internet's better or not, Mark, I love the Salvador Dali print behind you. You got a good place there. So, but you're still moving kind of slow. So I'm thinking we're not going to get great speech out of you. Let's hear it.
Tell us about the painting or tell us about swimming?
Either one.
I don't know much about the painting, but I can talk to you about swimming all day long.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
So I'm assuming the question was how we communicate with our kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bryan and I obviously talked about this, and I'm a pretty straightforward guy. Kids need to hear honesty, whether they like it or not. We operate on pretty simple rules in our 10 and under groups that I'm in charge of. You know, have a good time, have fun, be a great teammate, follow directions, and stay with the group. Don't just go off doing your own thing. Be focused. that's pretty much it. And when they don't do that, I am the first one to call them on it. I don't care where they are in the pool. I don't care if it's their first day. I don't care if they've been with me for 4 years. It's a system that works. And you know what? When practice is over, we can be goofy and silly, and I'm the funniest guy you're going to meet. But in the 45 minutes or hour and 15, I've got you in the water. I have a job to do, and I expect you to come here to be a competitive swimmer. We can still have fun. We have plenty of fun. Like I said, I'm goofy, but when it's time to do things and be focused, that's the expectation.
So,
and
Mark,
I
how
won't
much?
apologize for the standards that I set.
So, Mark, how much? And there's Kevin. We'll bring him up in a second. But Mark, how much do we get back to basics weekly on maybe the same thing, whether it's catch-up stroke, just the very basics, like the actual stroke technique itself on freestyle or backstroke? Some of these younger coaches are like, what do I do? What's my plan? Do I touch freestyle on Mondays and Thursdays? What do I do? What do you do, Mark?
Again, I operate on 3 simple principles, and it doesn't matter what stroke it is. There's head position. If your head's moving all over the place, you're not a swimmer. So you need to find a position for your head, the eyes down and forward. The next thing we focus on is their body line or their balance, right? And the next thing we focus on is either distance per stroke or their foot speed, depending on what it is we're doing. That's all we do. And it's very repetitive. And 10 and unders can do the same warm up for 3 weeks in a row, and they won't care. They'll actually like it. You couldn't do that with a 15-year-old, but you can do it with a 10-year-old.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, it seems like the 10 and unders, because I coached them for a long time. It seems like the 10 and unders, they'll do the same drills like every day.
But I do think that's the way to get those guys focused. And tell me this, coaches. For many years, we talked about the difference in the genders. There were boys needed a tribe. The girls were one in a different kind of way. The girls mature much more quickly than the boys. So do you do things with your team where you separate the genders either pre-adolescent or during adolescent?
Pretty much my time with working with John Morse. If any of you know John, I know you do, and Sid. I know Sid, you do for sure. But when I first got to Nashville, I used to ride the boys pretty hard for being boys, and I'd get on them about everything, and and John would always walk down the pool on his way out and walk by me and go, "Hey, why you want to chase all the boys off?" And then he'd just keep walking. And so after about a year of him doing that, we had a group of guys come through that program that were pretty phenomenal. 2008 trials, I think we had like 12 guys in high school. And about 7 of those guys probably weren't swimmers until they were about sophomores or juniors in high school. And that made me realize that you've got to treat the boys differently. So pretty much my philosophy with the boys now, my girls 11 to 14, I'm on them. We are working. We're going for national level type stuff. The boys have to make that decision on their own. So my joke is, as long as the boys are not endangering themselves or others and they're enjoying coming to practice, we're doing it right. I don't get on them about it. I think when you've got we had a 50-week-a-year sport with 12 hours of workout or 12 hours of water time a week. You can't treat them like the two 1-hour baseball practices for 3 months. You just can't do it. You're going to chase them out of the sport. They're going to go do something that's more fun if you're riding them all the time.
True.
It's a tough balance, though, because then the boys think you don't care about them because you're not getting on them all the time. So your kids that do want to do it, it's tough to get them to do it.
Okay, all right. Well, so you don't actually ever separate them in groups or not even on special days. Okay, all boys go do dry land with Coach Z, and I'm going to go take the – all right. Curious.
I couldn't do that. It would take away my primary coaching tool, which is making up the boyfriend girlfriend joke. Every time, like, hey, what's your boyfriend doing over there? That's not my boyfriend.
Yeah, well, we're not going into safe sport, Welter. Be careful there. But Mark,
those work though. Those work.
Before we
you got to connect.
Mark, I want to know if you've ever done anything in your program where. Because I have, and depending on the year, and I'm just curious, and I remember reading that book about 10 years ago, Boys Need a Tribe, and I had a lot of 10 and under boys. But anyway, it's 7:30, Joe. It's 7:30.
It's toast 30. It's toast 30.
It's we always have a tradition on the coach's happy hour that
Listen,
and now Mark probably is left. He left his drink in the other room because he had to move. Oh, he's ready. Okay, here we go.
It's like 2 o'clock. It's like 2 o'clock there.
Yeah, he's middle of the afternoon. He's got to go to practice.
4:30.
All right. So, and we do want to do a cheers because I want to dip into a little bit of this. I know Fitter and Faster did some sort of, and Brian's going to love this, some sort of point system on the best teams. And, so Bryan, tell us about, and I think Mark has something to do with this too. Tell us about what's going on there. Where y'all placed? How do they do this point system?
So I'm not sure how they came out and decided to do it, but Guy Edson and John Leonard set it up the way they set it up. And this year they did it. They've done it different almost every year, right, Mark? I mean, hasn't this changed, I feel like, quite a bit? Used to include 14 unders. Yeah, now it's just 12 and unders. But basically they did a virtual. Basically, they did a virtual swim meet for 12 and unders, 11 and 12 and 10 and under, and ranked. They took the top 20 and scored it as a meet, 10 and under and 11-12. And they scored it. Mark's team kicked everyone's butt, ran away with it. We got third. Another team in North Texas actually got second, but we beat them at tags, so that's okay. That's pretty much what they did. In past years, they've done a voting thing, but I think that was more just to get people to go to Fitter and Faster's website, because I think they just picked the coaches off the points anyways. But hey, good for Fitter and Faster.
Well, what's your thought on 10 and under scoring national points for a coach to get big recognition, and 10 and under swimming world records and things like that? Where do you guys stand? Let's start with Mark on this one.
That's a good question, Sid. Attaboy.
Yeah, I don't mind the rankings. It's fun. Quite frankly, the timing of this is good for us because it gave us a little lift in the middle of this COVID-19 stuff. And it gave our kids a little something to look forward to get back. I think the bottom line is my job as an educator and as a coach is to make sure that parents, kids, everybody around me understands that it's just a ranking. I often call 10 and under swimming fantasy swimming, because it's not really real. You could be the greatest athlete in the world at 10, break a bazillion records, and you won't be around at 16 maybe. So for me, it's fun. It's great. I don't mind it. I like it. It's great. We won. So, but the reality is it's about educating families and educating kids in the sport.
So where is your huge trophy? I heard it was like 6'5", and you had to add a room on.
I want to hear Bryan on the 10 and under rankings and world records for 10 and unders, because John Carroll, my great friend from the Jersey Wahoos for many years, we used to joke about running a national championships for 8 and unders because our mini meets in the Middle Atlantic were so off the wall crazy. And he ran a championship. But tell us, Bryan, where are we compared to the rest of the world, or what do you think should be the future when you're looking at 10 and under records?
I'm kind of with Mark. I don't dislike the idea of rankings and having 10 and unders get recognition for doing good things. I think the hard part, especially as a young coach, is you can't get enamored with a really good 10 and under, kind of like Mark was touching on. If you get a kid, I had a kid a long time ago that was 5'11", 140 pounds when he was 10. He was pretty good for a 10-year-old, and he ended up being a pretty good swimmer, but him being good at 10 had very little to do with any of the coaching, and it had more to do with just his physical stature. I don't dislike the rankings. I think coaches, like I said, young coaches need to be careful to make sure they're teaching the right message, and not get enamored with performance and let kids get away with things that they shouldn't get away with because that kid's really good and I don't want to lose them, or that time was so amazing that I can't criticize them. I think about Randy, having worked with Randy and Joe, some of the stories you guys have touched on where people break world records and they come over to Randy and Randy's like, that was terrible. You didn't do anything right, and I don't think it needs to be that extreme, but I do think you have to hold them accountable regardless of where they're performing. And we're proud of them when they do well, but we're just as proud of the kid who went a best time who maybe got 25th. And we make that clear. So I try not to make it different. And that's, I think, a tough thing as a young coach. I know my first two really good athletes in Gainesville, I did not do a very good job with. And when I look back on that, I was just enamored with performance. I really wanted my top 16 times, and I really wanted to see that kid win JOs. And I really wanted, and I let him get away with a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have let other kids get away with. And I definitely wouldn't have done now. So that's my thought on that.
Sid, and talking about, I guess from a kid's perspective, I started when I was 9 swimming, and I got fast pretty quickly, I guess, because of athletic ability or whatever. But the cool thing was you could go on Swimming World and they would print the top 10 in the nation or whatever, see these times. And Sid, you would look on there and you go, oh my gosh, all right, I'm 12th, whatever. I mean, so that I think kept me kind of focused on swimming. Now, if you're 88th in the country, I don't know. But I mean, that kept me in the game as a 10, 11-year-old. And you know what it did? It made me look at the 12-year-olds, see how fast they were going, see how fast I needed to go.
I remember they did like regular meets too. They would put in like Florida JOs or like Sunshine State Games. I remember getting Swimming World as a little kid, like running to the mailbox to see my name in the magazine. Like that was so cool. Man.
That was all of us in the pre-cell phone media days of the social media. I can't even remember it. Mark's probably too young to remember, but I'll tell you this. Santa Clara, Mark, was on the cover of that magazine quite a bit during my years. And George Haynes, one of my prize, my relationship with George was on – I'll tell you about it someday, but he inspires – talk about a guy who inspires. And I had the privilege of swimming for him 1 year at UCLA. And then coaching against him in Philadelphia for 2 years, and when he first came to Foxcatcher, and I was his in because I was his UCLA guy. And the inspiration that those coaches give us. I want to see what John Roy has to say. This is called best put Bryan having a kid. Okay, he was one of the best. It must be the guy he's talking about. Bryan looked at me and said, hey, you're going to need to go put him back together because I'm going to rip him apart for all the things he did wrong. So, Bryan, you were a young coach. You had this big beast of a guy, and John Roy is a surgeon.
No, that was a different kid. This was a little tiny kid, actually. Okay. This was in Baton Rouge. That was Grant Grenfell. He's a little tiny kid. He was really good for Louisiana, and he thought he was really good. And I got there coming from Florida, and I'm like, how many top 16 times have you had? Like, what have you really done? And we were having a hard time getting the message through that he wasn't as good as he thought he was. And that was in my first season. And I want to say I don't even remember what he went, but it was fast.
Yeah, well, I've seen the big guys like that at 10. And I agree. My philosophy, and I've probably been coaching longer than any of you guys. And I've been very blessed and very lucky. And I came from Bob Matson, and 3 days a week, even till we graduated high school, we turned that 25-yard pool into 20-yard course. And Bob would take 1/3 of the team, whether it was a senior group or the next group down, or even the third group down. And he would teach 20 yards mechanics classes, and it was unbelievable. We were doing actually, before Paul Bergen taught Tracy Calkins the breaststroke, Paul came and sat up. He was at Philadelphia Aquatic Club, and he sat up in the stands, and he's watching Matson, and he comes down. We had this guy, Schaefer Henry, Bobby Seagraves was a great breaststroke. Bob was teaching this crazy breaststroke that he learned from Bruce Jenner, but I'll have him on another time. But the technique that's involved with these younger kids, the focus, to me, that's the most important thing that we've got to do. And I think this gives us a chance. USA Swimming now is at a kind of a conundrum. There's no competition. What are we going to do next? How do we bring it back? I see all the editorials. Okay, what about, let's just have a competition based on stroke, but this and that. I don't know how you can do it. I do say age group swimming. I prefer the FINA age groups to change for one group. Boom, January 1 every year. I think it would help us with our age group mania here in this country. Number two, I really believe if we didn't have so many 10 and under rankings, I get it. But nationally, I've seen it destroy young kids. But a few of the strong ones get through. 11 and 12, I'm all for it. But boys 11 and 12, as you guys know, are completely different than girls 11 and 12. Completely different. And I do think, Mark, you've got a great situation out there with the tradition of George and everything from, at Santa Clara. My gosh, you guys are the premier long-term swimming club in the country. What is that tradition and the things that George Haynes, started still flow through to today, to your coaching, to your colleagues' coaching? Give us a little bit about Santa Clara and why it's so special.
Well, I mean, it starts when you walk onto the pool deck. I mean, we've got, the statue of George right out in front of the rotunda. And then you look across at the grandstands and you've got all the names of the Olympians and all of the accomplishments that have happened. And then below that, we've got, in the last 10 years, some of the high school champions and some of the people that made some world teams or went to trials or did some. So we're trying to incorporate the current membership with the past and kind of keep that connection alive. And it's an awe-inspiring place. I said a couple of weeks ago on an interview that, it's easy to get motivated when you walk on that pool deck and you see all that history. I swam in the international meet there. I swam in the senior nationals there in 1987. It's just something that, especially if you're from this area like I am, I've been here my whole life, it's an amazing place to be. And it's not hard to get yourself motivated or motivate the coaches or the people around you. Everybody can see it. It's a visual history right there.
Yeah, that's awesome. He has a rotunda. I don't have a rotunda. Okay, I don't have.
I'm going to tell you, it's an awesome statue.
What the hell is that? I need a rotunda. It sounds awesome.
It's a glorified lifeguard office.
Now, when George came to Philadelphia, Mark, he was a little bit shocked. Yeah, it was in the Mark DuPont days. We talked about it some with Frank Keith, but he was phenomenal for me because I got to talk to him and ask him all these questions. And one of the things I remember, I said, George, how about that dry land program, this and that? And he looked at me, he said, I didn't really follow it too much. I had some assistance. I said, well, he said, but I will tell you, Sid, the most important thing is to chronicle everything. Put yourself down. He said, he had all these grad assistants, of course, at UCLA. And so we'd be on those old Exergenes, this is 1978, 79. And nobody really knew who was working the hardest, right? The little plastic box. And so the guy would go, every time you pulled on it, he would go 172, 168, 173, and it was like, and everybody, and George said, just post the results of everything you do, and boys will kick their butts just to try and beat the next boy, So competition and practice, the great George Haynes told me that, and I'll never forget it. So what else do you two great coaches do? And Joe, you're a great coach too. Come on, for the competitive juices. Like, what are some of the special games you might play in practice?
I'll start while you guys are thinking. All right, this is just this week, okay? This week, I could start swimming fast. We started swimming fast a little bit, okay? So I would always tell what the heat before went on this fastest interval or fastest thing we were doing or the fastest split, like you were saying, Sid. Or we have two groups because of the COVID stuff. So I said, oh, well, the first group did this and the first group did that, So some kids would rise to that occasion. That's what we've done the last few days. So that works out really well. What about you two guys?
So we don't really play games. I've kind of found that
I'm not coming to your team. We don't play games.
We don't really. Well, I found that once you develop the attitude of we're there to get better, that when you play games, you end up with half the group like, well, if we're just going to do this, can I just go home? They don't want to play 10 and unders,
don't you? Don't you, Bryan? 10 and under?
Huh?
You coach.
I have some 10 and unders, but we don't really. They don't. I mean, the attitude that we've developed, they're not interested in that. They're there for swim practice and they want to get better. I'd say the one thing that we do, I mean,
tough.
We basically alternate our practices. So one day we'll go an interval-driven practice, just try to make whatever on whatever, and then the next day we pretty much open the intervals way up and we spread them out. And we race. And I call out times. I get every kid's time from the time. And we do that Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, pretty much throughout the cycle. So they have a pretty good idea what they're going, what they need to go. And I mean, we even talk about that with those younger kids. Some, if you want to go this, you can't break a minute in the 100 free if you can't break 30 in the 50. That's pretty simple.
Sid, to his point, if you think about it, the gymnasts that go to these gymnastics places, when they're 5 and 6, they're learning the discipline. And they're serious. Yeah, they're having fun, but they're serious about gymnastics and they're good. Look at Sid. He's like, oh yeah, I got this one. No, but when they're 12 and 13 and 14, they're at their max, right? Look at Sid. So that's what Bryan is teaching. That's what I'm saying. They're serious kids. And all right, Mark, go ahead. And I just wanted to get that off my chest because
I want to hear from Mark.
Best used to be a gymnast, so that's why I know that. Go ahead. See, there's Bess right there. She chimed in.
Game player either. I'm not a big game player either. I think that, we had horrible attendance on Friday nights. So on Friday nights at the last 10 minutes, we would do relays, right? And they have as much fun doing that as they have doing any game. We used to do Cannonball Friday. You'd start every Friday with a cannonball. That was enough for them. But we do challenges. And the kids find that fun. So we'll do a set of challenge 100s. You take a 10-year-old and have them go 3 rounds, 4 100s, right? Give them a couple minutes in between rounds. First round's on 140, second round on 135, third round on 130. Next week you come back, and if you made all those, you go 5 seconds faster. And then you go. So we make the fun of it, the challenges of swimming. I'm not like a sharks and minnows guy. I'm not, I don't know. That's just not my thing.
I like it. You guys are successful, so I get it. I mean, maybe it's me and my Boca bubble down here, but
Sid,
like entertainment. I mean, I'm out there dancing with our 10 and unders, and it's like, 11 and 12s. Yeah, but we play a lot of competitive games, and I mean, our coaches are great about coming up with creative ways to get them to race. And I think no matter how you skin it, the whole idea is you want your kids to be inspired, and I saw the question that Tyler Kearns put up there. If you had to prioritize an event or two for age groupers as benchmarks for gauging development, what would they be? I saw Mark Hesse's answer come up, but I'd like to hear from both you, Bryan and Joe, and all 3 of you, and see what you're thinking. I agree a lot with Mark's tie there, but what do you think? Go ahead, Bryan. Go ahead. Tell us what are the benchmark events?
If I had to say a benchmark event for 10 and unders, I'd probably pick the 200 IM. I think the 200 free has always been a strong event for my kids in my career. I think once you get to be 11 and 12, especially in a couple of the LSCs that I've been in, they're so competitive. You almost have to figure out what kids are really good at and let them be good at it, and then continue to work with them on getting better at the things that they're not as good at. I think if you don't focus a little bit and find them some success, it makes it a lot harder. I saw somebody put up there that the hunger is what drives them. So if they can get a little taste of success, I think you can sell it a lot easier on what it is you're trying to get them to do. So we maybe specialize a little bit earlier with my kids. But I wouldn't say it's specializing because we still work all the strokes. We still work all the distances. We still do all that stuff. I just disguise it better, I guess, than some people do. And I do let them specialize. I mean, if I've got a kid that's going to be more of a distance kid, we'll do a little more distance work with them, or we'll talk a little more about distance paces with them. If they're butterfly,
or if they like it. The kid may like to do, 500s. Okay, well, go do 500s,
And the other part of that is that the one thing, and I will say about little kids is I think that a lot of coaches make the mistake of, I don't know why fly has become so demonized in swimming, but if you don't do something right, you have a 200 fly at the end of practice. Like, to me, I'm never going to punish a kid with swimming. I'm going to punish a kid with push-ups, or I'm going to punish a kid with whatever, but I'm not going to punish a kid with swimming. So we embrace all the strokes, and we look at all the strokes equally. So my 10 and unders, they're not scared to swim fly. They like fly. They're not. It's not a stigma, and I think that's created by coaches in a lot of places, and probably by me early on in my career. So what do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm an IM guy. We swim all 4 strokes every day on a 10 another level, whether it's just in the warm up or something. But we're always doing all 4 strokes. I'm a 200 free guy. That's my thing. I mean, we had a 10-year-old this year. He went like 215, 200 IM, and 159, 200 free. Pretty good kid. And you know, we had a girl a couple years ago. She had left our program right before she broke the national record in the 200 IM, me attending, and went like 214 in the 200 IM. That's always been my strength. I think that they need to be well-rounded. I think that we need to give them balance. And I'll tell you, just from my own experience as an age group, when I was 10, I broke records in IM and freestyle. When I was 12, I broke records in backstroke. When I was 13, 14, I broke records in butterfly. So as your body changes, you don't know. But if you give them a well-rounded base, they're going to pick it. You just have to be able to give them something that's well-rounded. I wanted to say one more thing about the game thing, and I could do this when I had a smaller group. It's hard for me to do now when I've got 30, 40 people in a group. But when I was coaching in the early 2000s and I had a group of like 15, we would do a guess and goes game. And it was a good pacing game, and it was competitive. And basically, you do a 50, and you'd have to finish to your feet, right? And then you would have to guess your times. I would give you a number when you came in. You had to guess your times. And if you were right on to the 10th, you got a bingo, and you got to get out of practice.
Oh my God,
it's
awesome.
Within 0.1 to 0.3, if you were 0.1 to 0.3 in either direction, you got 1 in the bank. Once you got 3 in the bank, you got out. And we did that, you know, on a Friday night or at the end of a Saturday if we were racing that day, and the last half hour. So you might get out 20 minutes early. You might get out. I had one kid. It took him 37 50s to get 3 bingos. He was in 20 minutes early.
Good for him.
So I don't know how fun. I don't know how fun it was for him.
Well, I know Coach Mizell and Kevin here. He came in with relays every day. I do know that Harry Mizell would give us relays at least 3 times a week. And you know what? Everybody raced. If you weren't feeling good, if you were the slowest kid, the fastest kid, everybody was racing. And at least for that little period of time, 10 minutes, 15, they always were sprinting, always sprinting. So
Joe, we would do that for 20 yards in Matson's pool. We'd line up the short course and we'd go 20 yards across relays, 3 on a team, you know, and we usually have about, you know, 38, 42 people. So, you know, you'd have like 12, 13, 14 teams going across all these waves. And I can remember diving in once and catching my buddy Johnny Hogan's, like, just scoop off the dive. And you're learning so much just sprinting for 7 or 8 seconds. You want to do it for your team. It was unbelievable stuff. The games are important, but I like that both of you guys really focus on the important thing. So those are games when you're playing games with time and games for speed, and relays are games. And I think it's more a mentality. It doesn't have to be game. I agreed with Dick Schulberg years ago when he said, I don't do workouts, I do practice. We just come to practice. We come to train, we come to practice. He said, we're not work. You know, work is something like, you know, you break the bricks or you chop the wood or you do your work. You got to do work or you go to work and make money. But now we're looking at play. I want to go play basketball. I want to play soccer. No, I want to play swimming. And that's the mentality of the young kids that we need to do. Let them play swimming. Let them play everything till they're of that age, of that place, of that time when they need to commit, if they choose to commit. And if they don't, we'll send them the other end of the pool and we'll let them play water polo, which was my next question for you, Mark, because water polo in California is a huge, huge state sport. It's like the national sport of California. How do you deal with that, and what ages, and even through high school? Because you must have a lot of great athletes that you want to share with the water polo through high school. So how does that happen for you in Santa Clara?
Well, first, we have a water polo program. So we kind of control it that way. When it comes to it, the club thing is popping up. Stanford's a huge club. We've got the, you know, San Jose Water Polo Foundation is a huge club out of the high school that I coach at. It's really kind of funny because there are some people that are going to naturally drift away from swimming, but they like the water, so let them play water polo. And I think that's good for them. We've also had, you know, our best swimmer last year, Max Saunders, who just finished his freshman year at the University of Southern California, was a water polo player that happened to go 45 something in 100 freestyle as a sophomore, and basically decided he wasn't going to be a water polo player because he wasn't really good enough to start and play. And all of a sudden, last year on a high school team, he went 43.5 and he went 135. So some of those things, certain people take them more seriously than I do. I played water polo and swam. It's built into my DNA. I'm okay with it. The high school I coach at, if you're on the water polo team, you probably got to swim. It's okay. If it's good for the kids, it's fine. We're going to find our swimmers.
You know, there was a question from Chris that talks about what advice do you have for young coaches when dealing with coach mom and dad and the pressures they place on age group athletics regarding qualifying times and their feedback. And here Sid says, and here you boys say, I'm sure, because everybody has it. Everybody has them. Every team has them. So let's hear from both of you guys. And I will tell you, we have about 4 minutes left because this is a happy hour. So
I better
go ahead, Mark.
Because Welter will talk the whole time.
Good point, Mark.
Fair enough.
All right, yeah. So first of all, I say get older. Second, you've got to have a relationship with the parents for them to understand what it is you're trying to get out of their kid and what the important things are for them. The important things for parents when it comes to swimming is get them there on time, feed them when they're supposed to be fed, be supportive, give them a hug, and then let them go listen to their coach for their swimming. And I make that very upfront when we have parent meetings that, I will let the parents parent. If your kid's got a fever or cough or whatever, I'm not going to demand they come to practice. But when it comes to strategy for a 200 IM, or when it comes to how you're teaching a turn or again, just the fundamentals of swimming, it's very clear. They know my position. I've actually had one of my very best athletes who had a parent at the fence trying to, do all the hand signals in the stream. I went down to the kid and I said, hey, I need you to go hop out and tell your parent that if they keep doing that, you're going to get out of the pool. And the little girl got up, went over, told the parent that, went over and sat down. So as long as you are upfront with them and clear on it, and you're actually doing your job, you don't have a problem.
Good point. All right, Bryan, talk to us.
So I kind of do it a little differently. I'm a little bit sarcastic for those of you who know me. I kind of make coach mom and dad jokes. I kind of put it out in the open with the kid. And I kind of got this from working with Morse. I kind of have the attitude of I let the kids learn to filter through the noise. If it gets to a point where I do need to talk to the parent, then I'll talk to the parent. But for the most part, I try to just get the kid to buy into what it is that I'm doing and what the coaches are selling, and try to get them to learn to filter through the noise and understand that the coaches are providing a better direction. That's kind of the way I go at it. And like I said, I'm not scared. I tell them at the beginning of the season, every season, your job is to get them here, to ask them if they tried their hardest. If they say yes, to tell them they did a great job and you're proud of them. If they say no, tell them they need to try harder next time, and I'll take care of the rest. So that's pretty much where I go with it. I don't, and I'm lucky here because if they don't like my answers, they can just leave and we'll fill their spot with somebody else.
Well, I was going to say, you've got a 100-kid waiting list, and John Roy hit it best right there. A little sarcastic, biggest understatement of the show. But, hey, listen, you guys were awesome. You guys were awesome. It's great to talk about age group. We can talk about age group for hours. I want to thank all the people that listened with us and provided chat stuff in the chat. Sid, of course, always awesome. We do here at Swim Monkey, Sid, have lots of shows, including yours. Oh, so and your wife. So I mean, stay on the monkey. Stay on the monkey.
Coach Greg Troy on Monday night. Anybody would like to see the legendary hero of Gainesville swimming for many, many moons? He's going to be on with us, and we're going to have a good show Monday. Every Monday at 7. And then Wednesdays at 7, we're on the monkey. Joe and I. Joe, you'll be with me, of course.
On the monkey. And listen, Mark and Bryan, we need to come back much more.
Look at that, go, Mark. That's Coach George Haynes Grotto right there. That I went out a few years. That must have been 6, 8, 10 years ago. I was out for one of the cup meets, and You know, it says there George Haynes started Santa Clara in 1951, and he won 43 national team titles. It says he had his swimmers won 44 Olympic golds, 14 silver, 10 bronze. Unbelievable. He was on 7 different Olympic teams. The guy, he inspired, I mean, continues. Look at Mark, you're blessed and to be a part of everything you're doing out there. Bryan, thank you so much. Joe, I love being a part of the Swimmer Joe and the coaches happy hour. The coaches happy hour.
Hey, I'm building a rotunda starting tomorrow. So I'm building a rotunda and we're going to get going. But anyway, guys,
So you probably need another COVID project, right?
We do. I do. I'm about done with all my COVID projects. I got some more. If you want to see my COVID projects, go to. No, anyway. All right. So anyway, guys, I will see you next time and swim monkey, baby. I'll see y'all later.
Thank you very much.
Join us on the Swim Monkey.
Swim
Swim monkey.
Monkey TV. On the monkey.